is the year 2472, and the Earth has suffered a great calamity. Hundreds of years of popular culture have vanished. Without the sacred films and text for guidance, civilization is devoid of anything cool. Then, 3 incubation chambers are unearthed, and from within, men from the time of the great blockbusters emerge. Now, through highly interesting conversations, they share invaluable insight about what once was. The movies, the shows, the comics, toys, and books. This is
The Hyperspace.
Podcasting in the 25th century.
Hello and welcome into episode 3 of The Hyperspace, Podcasting in the 25th century. My name is Jared.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt.
And I'm Mike.
You know, an observation I have about being here in the 25th century, guys.
What's that?
Their movie weapons are awful.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
That's because all things cool have disappeared.
In the great calamity. They lost everything cool. I remember, I remember stepping out of my incubation chamber and being saddened and sickened by what I saw.
I'm glad we're here to help re-educate. So we should probably today talk about our favorite movie weapons that we grew up with.
Oh, absolutely. Great idea, Matt.
Fantastic.
I got to tell you, something that they're really missing here as well.
Yeah.
Which was a national treasure when we were back in the 21st century.
Yeah.
Sam Rockwell.
Oh, Sam Rockwell.
Claridge high-tech semi-automatic 9mm pistol. 2 downtown? I agree. M24 shotgun, pump action, 5-round magazine. You know what? You're not a hunter. What am I talking about? I'm getting rid of it. This is the FN 2000 from Belgium. They do make something better than waffles. It's beautiful, but I can tell this isn't disco enough for you, so I'm gonna put it right here. We're looking at a Milcore 40mm grenade launcher. Tear gas, smoke, hippie control. You're tough. Let me tell you something. Size does matter. Don't let anyone tell you different. This is an M134 762 minigun, 6 individual barrels, the torso taker, powder maker. Our boys in uniform call it Uncle Gazpacho or Puff the Magic Dragon. Okay. These are the Cubans, baby. These are the Cohibas, the Monte Cristos. This is a kinetic kill sidewinder vehicle with a secondary cyclotrimethylene trinitramine RDX burst. It's capable of busting the bunker under the bunker you just busted. If it were any smarter, it'd write a book that would make Ulysses look like it was written in crayon. And it would read it to you.
That's it. That's okay. That kind of sets the stage, ladies and gentlemen, for what we're going to be talking about today.
But I mean,
There's nary a weapon like that here in the 25th century.
No.
We've had a good run here over the past 2 weeks.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
We're getting a lot of great reviews, great feedback.
And we appreciate all of you.
Yeah. Listen, keep the comments coming. It's always great to read from our super fans out there that remember the heyday of entertainment.
That's right.
That appreciate it.
That's right.
They're all on the ground floor with us.
They are. I mean, because right now this is podcast number 3 of the only podcast in existence. So you're all pioneers, and we appreciate you having you on this journey with us.
This podcasting thing is going to catch fire sometime. So.
I agree. I told him, maybe in 5 years, you're probably looking at 12, 13 podcasts on the internet.
Let's not get crazy.
No, but talking about getting crazy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some crazy news we just heard.
Some crazy awesome news.
News from the interwebs.
So Lord of the Rings fans got some amazing news today, didn't they, Mike?
They certainly did. Today, it was announced who would be the director of the first 2 episodes and the executive producer of the TV series that Amazon is producing. And this is pretty cool news. The whole thing's pretty cool, actually, for those of us who are fans of Middle-earth, especially Amazon. I guess it's going to be one of the most expensive shows they've ever produced.
9-figure deal.
It's the most expensive show in history of the universe.
And
I mean, that's it.
There are shows on Mars that haven't even come close to this show.
Absolutely. No,
But anyway,
it is the most expensive TV show ever.
the very cool thing is they've announced the director, who will be, now I want to make sure I say his name right, Juan Bayano. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with this specific director. He recently did the last Jurassic World movie, Fallen Kingdom, which I think, well, it was really good, but it was definitely a lot different. I think he pulled off a really strange story that, I mean, on all intents and purposes, the story was kind of goofy, but I think he did a great job. But he's also known for the first movie he did was it was a ghost story called The Orphanage. And if you haven't seen it, I cannot recommend it enough. It's in Spanish, so you'll have to read subtitles.
Yeah, I've seen that.
What? What?
Yeah.
I'm doing that.
Come on. I don't read books unless they have pictures. But anyway, but if you haven't seen that movie, it's amazing. It's scary. It's sweet. It's really
creepy.
Good. It's creepy,
yeah.
But it's just really good. He's also done a movie with Ewan McGregor called The Impossible, which was about the tsunami that hit India. I have not watched that. I've heard it is very good, but it's also very hard to watch.
Well, you know what gives me comfort in the whole choice is that the Tolkien estate is very active in who gets to touch their IP, who gets to touch the story. I know that they were very much involved in the choice. So for him to be picked by, or at least to be, considered by them, you have to have a lot of faith in it because they are very much are protective of their estate and their story. So I'm very excited that he's going to get his hands on it, and I'm sure he's going to do an amazing job with it.
Within the past week, I've heard that they're filming in New Zealand,
which is pretty cool. Hopefully they will shoot outside and not in studios like they did with The Hobbit.
Sure.
Well, I'm sure they'll take advantage. I mean, for the price tag that this is coming with, I'm sure they're going to be hitting locations like crazy. And I'm really excited to see who they cast out for this, especially now that they have deep pockets. I think, we might see some really amazing talent come on board with this show.
Well, especially with this director, because, I mean, you kind of get the sense he's the kind of director people want to work with.
Well, I mean, this story is a great example of the resurgence of entertainment in the sense that big movie houses aren't getting the big projects anymore. The networks aren't getting the big projects. You have these silo houses like, the Netflix and the Amazon Studios and even HBO as a single entity are getting these amazing projects that the big movie houses or networks used to vie for, but now they don't get. So you're getting a lot of this really high-end production, high-end storytelling from these other houses, and it's really making it a rich environment and a big competitive environment for entertainment now on who gets the project and who can tell the better story. And it's really, really amazing when you think about it. So good for Amazon Studios. I can't wait to see what they do with it.
So I've heard different things. Is Peter Jackson involved in the producer capacity?
That's rumors. Like some rumors have they've spoken to him. He said they haven't spoken to him. I mean, as far as I know, it is an actual prequel to the films, which I hope it is, because I like to keep everything contained within that universe because they built so much. It'd be a shame to lose it. But I don't know, man. I mean, does he need to be involved? He's left them with enough to work with.
So you're thinking that they'll use the existing infrastructure, like the costumes and weapons and
I hope
props.
so. There's no reason not to.
I would like to be able to see this director be unchained and let him be the decision maker and not have too many cooks in the kitchen. I mean, this kind of project is already going to be replete with lots of producers and lots of people who have input. And then I think the last thing he needs is Peter Jackson being on set or being in the studio with him, commenting on decisions. I think let this guy go, let him get a vision, and let him stick with it. And nothing against Peter Jackson. He did an amazing job with the three movies, and the Hobbit movies, of course. But I would like to see this guy just take the reins and go and see what he does.
Well, he's definitely he definitely doesn't seem like someone that would need an overseer. Like he can,
exactly.
It's like he can handle it. He's got the clout,
right?
The work backing him up. So, but anyway, when I saw that, I was really excited about it. I mean, I'm really excited about it anyway. My only concern is I hope they don't chase Game of Thrones. I hope they just, do their own thing.
Yeah,
They're not like
well, look,
they're not trying to ape anything, because they don't need to. I mean, this was before all that.
Look,
so.
Lord of the Rings set the bar, and I'm really excited to get back into Middle Earth. And I think for everybody who's read the books, who's watched the movies, who's always been a fan, this is the best, coolest news that you could get. And we're going to keep you updated as we get updates, as we hear them. We're going to give them to you. This is a fun project that we're really excited about. I know you are too. So, guys, we'll keep you updated.
Fingers crossed Warwick Davis comes back.
Yes. Yes, hopefully.
Wait,
that's
great. That's the same thing, right?
Yes.
Ah, crap.
The 12-gauge autoloader.
That's Italian. You can go pump or auto.
The 45 long slide with laser sighting.
These are brand new. We just got them in. That's a good gun. You just touch the trigger, the beam comes on, and you put the red dot where you want the bullet to go. You can't miss. Anything else?
Phased plasma rifle in the 40-watt range.
Hey, just what you see, pal.
The Uzi 9mm.
You know your weapons, buddy. Any one of these is ideal for home defense. So, which will it be?
All.
I may close early today. There's a 15-day wait on the handguns, but the rifles you can take right now. You can't do that.
Wrong.
Now it's time where we're going to tell you about our top 10 favorite movie weapons. Each of us has compiled our favorite list, and we're going to share it out with you. Jared,
Yes,
why don't you kick us off?
All right. My first movie weapon, or my number 10, I figure there's few weapons that could wipe out half the universe. And mine is the Infinity Gauntlet.
You should have gone for the head.
Well, that pretty much sums up the Infinity Gauntlet for me.
Yeah.
Awesome weapon. Love the movies. Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet was one of the definite all-time coolest weapons of all movies.
Yes, I agree with that. Especially surprising because it's such a recent film, but it certainly made an impact when you saw all your heroes turn to ash.
Yeah, and it was a different kind of weapon. It was very unique. It was cool in the spectrum of what weapons are in movies. It was scary. It was neat. It was a great weapon. I agree with you.
It's funny, too, because it's like built around the concept that he just snaps his fingers. I want to snap my finger. I want to snap my finger.
That's it. So maybe the weapon should have been thumb and middle finger of Thanos.
Oh, that's a good point.
Don't make me snap. I'll do it.
But yeah, so that's my number 10.
That's a good one. I like that. Mike, what's your number 10?
All right, so this one is admittedly a bit obscure, but I saw this movie when I was a kid. I really don't remember much about the movie, but I do remember the specific weapon. It was from Looker, and it's called a Looker gun. So go ahead and roll that. Yep, those little flips. That's from the gun. And basically,
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry, Mike. What's the movie called?
Looker.
What is Looker? I've never heard of Looker.
It's directed by Michael Crichton, and it stars Albert Finney and Susan Day.
Wow.
And he plays like a plastic surgeon.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, what you're hearing now is the only top 10 movie weapons list that's going to include that.
All right, yeah, but to be fair, the gun itself is pretty cool in that when people get flashed with it, they lose time. So there's a scene where they're in a car.
Oh, okay.
They're in a car chase and they're like hitting each other with this gun. And at one point, Albert Finney,
They're just out of gas at some point.
well,
Like, I just filled the tank up.
yeah, I mean, yeah, Albert Finney like wakes up in a water fountain, like what, So I thought
That's what.
I know, but it's true. Like, but anyway, I thought it's a pretty. cool weapon, and it's like stuck with me all these years. So anyway, that's why I threw it in.
All right, Looker getting its time in the spotlight. It's probably overdue. So
it's the only time you're going to hear Looker mentioned on a podcast.
You know what's pretty cool about that? When you're listening to this podcast, it's probably the only time Looker's being mentioned in the world at that time.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
So
you never know. We'll probably do a
relish this moment, everyone.
See an entire podcast designate to Looker.
Okay.
Episode 27.
Yeah, maybe that's somewhere down the line. We'll have to do that.
Oh, man, that's a good one. All right, that's a good number 10.
Matt, your number 10?
My number 10 is Captain America's shield.
How come it's not a standard issue?
That's the rarest metal on Earth. What you're holding there, that's all we've got.
You quite finished, Mr. Stark? I'm sure the captain has some unfinished business.
What do you think?
Yes, I think it works.
To me, the physics-defying symbol of Captain America has always been really cool. Yeah, it's one of those things that I remember when I was a kid, maybe from that really awful live-action show they did.
Yes, in the 70s.
It's something. Yeah, but I mean, I remember seeing that in reruns, and growing up, that Captain America shield's always been something cool. And for me, in the Avengers Marvel line, Captain America movies have always been my favorite.
Yeah.
Captain America being actually, I think, my favorite of the entire bunch.
Yeah.
But yeah, his shield was always one of those cool, amazing, simple weapons that just was so iconic that it just stuck out. But it made number 10.
Yeah, I agree. I like that.
I'll say about that too is the shield. Like, I was never a Captain America fan, and the shield, you know, in a comic book was like, that seemed kind of silly. Like, oh yeah, you got a shield. But in the movie, I mean, that thing was so awesome. And, you know, the way they did it, when that shield was hitting people, you felt it. Like,
yes.
You're like, you know, ouch. So the shield is definitely a pretty awesome weapon, and of course defies any physics whatsoever.
Exactly, just flipping around,
and it comes back to him like a boomerang.
I think when Spider-Man said in Civil War, like, how is it even doing that? So yeah, that's a good choice.
Yeah, shield's
shield's awesome. Pretty cool. Okay, so those are our number 10s. Number 9, Jared.
This is going to be from any number of James Bond film, the Walther PPK.
Classic.
Walther PPK, 7.65 mil with a delivery like a brick through a plate glass window. Takes a Brausch silencer with very little reduction in muzzle velocity. The American CIA swear by them.
The American CIA swear by them.
Now, does he actually use that gun in every movie?
He uses it all the way up through, I think, GoldenEye, and then they finally replace it with another Walther.
Yeah, they do the updated Walther.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's always a Walther. But the PPK was always that style. There's always James Bond's gun. I mean, nobody else used the PPK like James Bond.
Like the smallish gun. And that little clip we heard was from Dr. No, the first James Bond film, and he was being scolded for still using his Beretta. And he was given the Walther in that movie.
Oh, that's good.
Who gave it to him? That wasn't there at that point.
That was Major Boothroyd we heard from. That was not, of course, the Desmond Llewellyn Q that everyone came to know and love. He was playing. It was a different actor playing him in that role. But he was in M's office when he got that gun. What else? What do we got, Mike?
So I guess it's my turn. All right. So
it's your turn. This
one is from one of my favorite movies, the .44 Magnum from Dirty Harry. So let's roll that clip. Now, just listen to the chaos this gun causes. I mean, cars screeching, glass breaking. One point, a fire hydrant blows up.
Yeah, I hear the bells in the background.
I mean, it's just a calamity when he's firing that thing. And I don't even know if that's a 44
great gun. It's such a great gun. Such a great movie gun.
I don't even know if that's actually a 44 Magnum sound.
Making that sound. I think it's a howitzer. That's what you're hearing.
That they dubbed in. But the point is, it's, and right, that leads to the famous, do you feel lucky, punk?
Oh, yeah.
Line.
Did he fire 6 shots or only 5?
And Dirty Harry's such a great character, which is interesting as Frank Sinatra was originally supposed to play him. That's who the role was. Yeah, that's who the role was written for.
It's always interesting to hear who almost had the roles
I know,
and
it's
how bad those roles would have become.
You're like,
if it had been.
What?
So
Frank Sinatra? Wow.
I mean, how forgettable would that role have been if Frank Sinatra had taken?
Imagine him shooting it. I couldn't.
It's like Tom Selleck as Indiana Jones. I mean, it would have been.
That's a little close. That's a little closer than Frank Sinatra.
What are you doing, punk? Hey, I'm gonna sing you a song. So. Yeah, but a 44 Magnum is a substantial. I've actually held one. I haven't fired one, but it is a large weapon.
Yeah, and Clint Eastwood as Dirty Harry, especially when I was a kid, was one of those like super movie stars. It's that he was a super like movie character. It's like all the kids would quote him. It's the movie your parents wouldn't let you watch, and if you watch it now, it's like it's laughable. But
I think the first one holds up. The sequels are not good.
They go south quick.
Yeah, very, very, very quick.
They jump the shark pretty fast, but the first one is a classic.
Yeah, first one's
good.
Masterpiece. Yeah. All right, so Matt?
My number 9, of all things, I'm thinking, when I was a kid, these came from when I was a kid, there was one knife I always wanted. It's the one knife every kid wanted in the 80s.
I don't make the orders. I'd take them just like you. I swear to God, I didn't know it was supposed to happen like this. It was just supposed to be another assignment. Mission.
Rambo just stopped him.
Listen to it.
You know there's one out there. You know where they are. Find them, or I'll find you.
Find them. Of course, if you don't know what's happening there, Rambo just jammed his incredibly large survival knife into the table.
Yeah.
That survival knife was the coolest knife that ever existed for me as a kid. I wanted a survival knife like there was no one like.
And you could buy them everywhere,
and I never had one. I always wanted one, but I never.
I think
had
I saw one at Walgreens.
I mean, the survival knife. I don't even know if anybody even knew what a survival knife was before the Rambo movies.
Oh man, putting the matches in waterproof casing.
You could have fishing line in the handle. I mean, that blade would probably snap right off if you ever had to use it on anything, but it was cool looking. But yeah, his survival knife, the Rambo survival knife for me definitely makes the top 10 list.
My favorite
compass in the handle.
Yeah, my favorite part is when he does use that. Like he takes the top off so he can use it as a compass. Like he can't just hold the knife.
Yeah. The knife throws it off.
So it's like clearly it's like a commercial. What do you do when you're lost in the woods?
Oh man,
Rambo uses his survival knife.
Oh man, that's a good choice.
Now Rambo's knife. That's my number 9.
That's a solid choice.
Thank you. Number 8. Jared.
We're moving to the 8s now.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna go with who you gonna call. And there it is, shutting down. Yes, the proton pack, ladies and gentlemen, the proton pack.
That proton pack has a great setup when they're in the elevator.
Yeah.
And what is it?
Each one of us is wearing an unlicensed nuclear accelerator on our back. And then they all just get to the...
They back away.
like it's going to help.
Like it would matter in that elevator.
But I love that. When I was a kid, what fascinated me was all the lights and all the business on the back of it. Like,
oh yeah,
it just...
it looked real. It looked like something that like you would actually use.
Yeah, it looked.
It made total sense.
Yeah,
it made total sense.
It's like, hey, man, if you're going to go grab Ghost with some sort of weird string laser, then this is what it's going to look like.
Obviously.
And yeah, and so I thought it was really cool.
And that movie was one of my favorites as a kid. That was such a cool movie.
It's still
great
great.
movie.
Still
my brother, my twin brother, when I was in 5th grade in 1985, he and 2 other friends in the talent show for our elementary school, did a breakdance routine as Ghostbusters.
Wow.
That's pretty awesome.
Is there any
I think it
video
was awesome.
of
I
this?
think we all cheered.
Is there video of this?
There's no video.
Dang it.
Lost to the ages.
Yeah, I'm sure that maybe somebody has a video, but it's nothing I can grab. But Ghostbusters was everywhere. It was one of those movies that was a superstar hit in merchandising. It was a great. It holds up today to watch. It was just such a well done movie and such a fun movie to watch.
Yeah, and that's.
And you know, I have to say, it's one of those movies as a dad that I'm looking forward to showing to my kids. But I have to tell you, I would show it to him right now. My 3-year-old he's almost 4, except for the opening scene, which is terrifying.
Yeah,
and I know he would hate me forever if I showed him that, just because of that opening scene.
And maybe you'd have to skip the Dan Aykroyd
dream sequence.
Yeah.
You know, when I was 9 or 10, when I saw that, I was a little confused.
Yeah, I didn't know what that meant.
I worked through it. later.
What does that mean? What is happening here?
What the crap? Okay, so from Dan Aykroyd's crotch to the next one, where are we going?
This one is, go ahead and roll it. This one
What the hell am I listening to?
That is the finger knives of Freddy Krueger.
Is that what that is? Because I don't.
You hear
That's
it.
a top 10 movie weapon.
I think the thing about that, and I don't know if people, unless you lived in that time, won't remember, but everyone wanted a Freddy Krueger glove.
I had one. I got it at Toys R Us.
I mean,
yeah, you're right. I wanted one. I didn't have.
I didn't have one either,
right.
but man, I wanted one. And you'd see somebody with one at school, especially like on Halloween, and you'd be like, oh, yeah, and there's no way they'd let kids bring those.
I was thinking the same thing.
Now.
There's no way a stupid Freddy Krueger plastic glove would probably get you expelled.
Yeah. But I had one, and I enjoyed it. And I wasn't even allowed to watch those movies. But
Freddy Krueger.
When I saw my first Nightmare on Elm Street, I think it was like one of those late nights. We had just gotten like HBO. Parents had been asleep, and I'm like, I'm watching it, and it was terrifying.
Well, by the time I saw it,
and that was last year,
everyone had told me, I think, every single frame that had happened.
It came out in what, 84?
Yeah,
the first
85.
Well, I mean, Mike was already 36 when he watched it for the first time. So
it was one of those movies you heard about at school first. And,
yes.
And that glove was very iconic. And
did they make lunch boxes for that?
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm certain they did.
It's funny, the level of R-rated stuff that made it into kids' lunch boxes that the kids could never
Rambo,
see.
Speaking of Rambo, he did. They had a toy line.
I had Rambo action figures. I didn't see the movie yet.
Wow.
So anyway, I think that's
a different time.
That's true.
Freddy Krueger gloves, very important to our history.
That's a good one. I like that. Hey, look, Freddy Krueger, one of the top movie villains of all time.
The movie still holds up. The first one.
Oh yeah, the character holds up. I'm not saying it needs a remake because it doesn't, but those are great movies.
Yeah, the reboot was.
I have to revisit it sometime. I think I'm up here.
You are.
What's my number 8? Conan the Barbarian's Sword.
Yeah, it's a good sword.
What do we got? Oh, wait.
What's this?
Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, wait, this is when Arnold Schwarzenegger gets attacked by dogs on the set. Hold on.
God damn it.
If you haven't seen that, go YouTube Arnold attacked by dogs, and you'll see him on the set of Conan getting attacked by dogs. It's classic.
Sorry.
God damn it!
I can't look at Mike. Mike starts like going into convulsions. Okay, so yeah, that's a good sword.
Conan was one of those movies I didn't see until years after it came out, until it hit cable, long after it hit cable. This was kind of one of those things that It was a little too risque for my parents to let me watch, and for good reason. And I remember, as a kid, you're always into finding sticks in the woods and playing swords and stuff. And that was one I always pictured that I found. When he finds it in that crypt, supposedly from Atlantis, and he knocks off all the dust and the grit and all that stuff, and it emerges. And how he wielded the sword in the movie, to me, was like, that's exactly how you're supposed to use a sword in my child mind.
Well, about 20 years ago, when I was working for a channel called Shop and Home, we had a knife collector's show, and they sold a replica of that Conan sword, and it was pretty impressive to hold. That's
pretty fun. The knife shows of the home shopping channels.
We can talk about that all day long.
Yesteryear.
But
that's a whole nother episode.
It is.
But that's great. That would have been a cool replica to have, actually. Cool. All right. So what are we on, Jared? Number 7.
Let's take a listen.
There's no way that's a revolver. That's Indy's canon.
That is the super exaggerated report of a Webley revolver from take your pick of Indiana Jones.
Like a Sherman tank firing.
Yeah. But the thing I loved about that gun in the Indy movies is the way he loaded it. The way it was, you had to split it open.
The break open, yeah.
Yeah. And the Webley was used, I found out, in World War I. Which is a kind of a cool callback, because if you look at the Young Indy TV series, he fought in World War I.
That's a great series.
So I like to think that he maybe held on to one of those guns into his adult years.
Sure.
Yeah.
He's a cautious fellow. He kept it around.
You know what a cautious fellow I am. But yeah, I think the gun's unique, and of course Ben Burt really punched it up there in post with those to go along with the mallets hitting watermelon sound of people being punched in the jaw. But
there's so much great about Indiana Jones in those movies. The Webley's a great weapon. Definitely belongs up there. Mike, number 7.
I picked the chainsaw hand from Evil Dead. So,
groovy.
The thing, aside from it just being like this cool idea, that when you watch the first, or the Evil Dead 2, when you watch the second Evil Dead, and that scene basically you just realize that movie is just completely over. I mean, the movie's over the top, but when he puts that on his hand, it's a really like a signature moment for the series where you're like, okay, whatever. I mean, whatever is going to happen. I mean, this is pure insanity. So it's a great weapon, great moment in the movie.
Oh man. And Evil Dead 2, by far one of my favorite movies of all time. I remember when I was in 8th grade, it was one of those movies, you kind of have girlfriends and, everyone's kind of dating, but not really because you're in 8th grade. And I remember that was one of the movies where I joined a group of people and like a girl I was dating. And we all watched the Evil Dead 2, and I had no idea what it was. They just got it from Blockbuster. And I remember being in that room and everybody was both terrified and laughing their ass off at that movie. And from that moment on, that movie's always been one of my favorites. Ash, one of the coolest characters of all time. That movie, although people, will say that Evil Dead 1 stands on its own, which it does, but Evil Dead 2 really, to me, kicked it off as a superstar movie. And that's one of the best weapons of all time. His chainsaw hand is by far one of the best weapons. I agree 100%.
It's a cartoon movie. I mean, the movie is a cartoon filmed in live action.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great one. All right, my number 7 comes from a movie in 1997 that actually it became, I'd say it became one of my top 50 movies. 50. The Fifth Element.
Your time for revenge is at hand. Voila, the ZF-1. Slide. Handles adjustable for easy carrying. Good for riders and lefties. Breaks down on 4 parts. Undetectable by X-ray. Ideal for quick, discreet interventions. A word on firepower. Titanium recharger. 3,000 round clip with bursts of 3 to 300. With the replay button and another Zorg invention, it's even easier. One shot. And replay sends every following shot to the same location. And finish the job? All the all goldies but goldies. Rocket launcher. Arrow launcher. With explosion of poisonous gas head. Very practical. Our famous net launcher. The always efficient flamethrower. My favorite. And for the grand finale, the all-new Ice Cube system.
Great. I love the movie. Great weapon. You know, I still think today I would watch Bruce Willis save the world or the universe in any movie, no matter how old he gets. And that movie was so over the top and such a visual extravaganza. It just was one of my favorites.
It was a surprise, too, because I remember someone saw it before me, and I said, what would you think of it? And he looked at me, and he was like, you know, it's actually really funny. And I was like, surprised. But, man, that movie's a blast. And Gary Oldman is so great, especially with that Southern accent that's like out of nowhere. Yeah. But he works it. I mean...
Agree.
Yeah, it's such a cool movie. It's just, and I saw it not long ago, and it still holds up.
Oh, it does, definitely, no doubt.
But yeah, that's my episode of the ZF1 from Fifth Element. Number 6, Jared.
All right, the number 6 is well, let's hear it. Can you guess what it is?
I'm having trouble on that one.
Thank you for your cooperation.
No, of course.
Yeah, I thought the RoboCop gun, what amazed me back then was just the way it holstered in his leg. You know, it just popped out of his leg. I love that gun.
You know, I got to give that movie a lot of credit too. I resaw that maybe 2 years ago, and I had forgotten how gory that movie was.
Oh yeah, dude!
For the time when it came out, I got to give that a lot of credit for coming out. I mean, it was pretty no holds barred gore fest. It was pretty awesome.
Oh yeah, it pulls no punches.
No, it doesn't.
And that gun does a lot of damage.
Yes, it does.
Especially to any would-be rapists.
Oh, yeah. You've suffered an emotional trauma. Yeah, that's crazy.
RoboCop is just, the first movie is one of my all-time favorite movies. It's just amazing.
And it's such a timestamp of the 80s, too.
Yeah, even though they were trying to set it sometime in the future, it definitely... is firmly rooted in the 80s.
Yeah.
And not for nothing, but this is also Mike's number 4 pick. This is our first overlap.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We have an overlap.
So we get to skip Mike when number 4 rolls around. Oh,
well, we're about to overlap now as I overlap you with my number 6. Hit it.
Oh, come on.
What the heck was that?
The Star Trek phaser.
Was it set on stun?
I don't know.
Oh, man. What a cool gun.
It's a phaser.
What a cool weapon.
I'll tell you what, that's a cool gun, but when you see it used in Star Trek 2, when Tyrell uses it on himself. And he does that like horrible noise he makes as he's
he's disintegrating.
He's being disintegrated alive. I mean, it's like that's when you're like, oh, that's kind of gruesome.
That's crazy. Well, I like the phaser from the original show because you had the two versions. Like you had the small Type 1 phaser, which kind of looked like a remote control or a mouse. And then the Type 2 phaser looked like a gun, and the Type 1 phaser kind of fit into it, like docked with it.
Yeah.
And I thought, as a kid, I thought that was just really awesome. But I never had a toy of that though.
I didn't either. I had Constructs, which we talked about in a previous podcast, toys, and I would construct Star Trek phasers all the time. I'd run around the house with a Constructs phaser. That was my go-to toy weapon, constructs phaser that I would build.
Yeah, and I mean, I thought I loved them. I thought that it was cool. You could set them to stun or to disintegrate. Yeah, Star Trek phaser.
Yeah, it was a classic.
That's actually my number 2. Mike's number 6. So, can we figure out where we are now?
Well, Matt, you're on your number 6.
All right, my number 6 is Sting from Lord of the Rings.
My old sword, Sting. Here, take it, take it. It's so light. Yes, yeah, made by the elves, you know. The blade glows blue when orcs are close. And it's times like that, my lad, when you have to be extra careful.
You are a great swordsman.
I remember being a fan of it when I was a kid and I saw the animated Hobbit. And then, of course, I read the books later. And then, of course, the movies. And I thought, it's such a neat weapon and it's so cool and has a great story to it. And it was just one of my favorites.
It glows when orcs are near. Yeah, it's a good choice.
Well, I like, Jackson brought in like real, like swordsmiths and
to make it.
Real elves to make it.
Yeah, real elves. And it's a cool looking sword. They did in fact do it justice.
Absolutely. I was happy to see it again in the Hobbit films that came out later.
And you got to see why it was named Sting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
So, Jared, what are we moving on to? Number 5.
Well, if you can't guess that, I can't help you. Game over, man. Why don't you put her in charge, man?
That may be one of the most signature sounding guns in any movie ever, right there.
Yeah, they're awesome. You know what really grabbed me when, as a younger man, was the digital display showing how many rounds they had left. That was built into the gun.
That's groundbreaking.
Yeah. I know. It was crazy.
Having the motion sensor attached to it, that was a stressful movie, man. Aliens was a stress pot for me. I mean, where Alien was a legit, it wasn't really even as much sci-fi as it was horror. I mean, Aliens picked up a whole new level of suspense for me. And man, seeing that blip when it gets closer and they're in the room and all of a sudden everyone opens up with their pulse rifles into the ceiling. Crazy, great scenes. Great weapon, great scenes.
But also, the pulse rifles were quite good at dispatching the aliens.
Yes.
They just exploded.
Yeah, they were. There was...
soup out of them.
They did. And I think whatever we may think of Cameron's current output, he has a distinct style when he's designing military hardware that I think is really is a great aesthetic. And it even carries over into like Avatar. The stuff he creates for Aliens and then for Terminator and later for Avatar, it all looks like it comes from the same place. And I think he's great at designing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Pulse rifle, amazing weapon.
Yeah.
Mike, number 5.
All right, number 5 for me is from a movie I actually saw as a kid. It was Disney's first PG movie, and this scene is probably why it got a PG rating.
Maximilian!
This robot was terrifying to me as a kid. Oh, man.
Oh, it's been way too long since I've watched that.
The black hole.
I like it. You watch it as an adult now, and it's like it feels like there's a middle section missing out of the movie. But yeah, Maximilian was a great design, a great robot, and I don't know what practicality having spinning blades. Why Reinhardt did that? He's designing the robot, and he's like, spinning blades. It definitely needs that. It took care of Norman Bates there.
That movie may be a bit dated to watch, and I don't know if it quite holds up, and there's some things that definitely won't hold up in it, but it was a bold move by Disney. It was a dark movie. I mean, it was from start to finish, it was dark. I remember as a kid that movie I watched a lot. I don't remember why I watched it so much. It was always on, and it always freaked me out. And Maximilian was one of those specters in the movies that was just terrifying. And those blades, when he took him out, it was great. That sound is just you can't repeat. You
can imagine seeing that as a kid. You're like, oh, okay, that's terrible.
I saw it as a kid. I didn't see it in the theater, of course, but I mean, I remember.
My dad took me to see it.
I mean, what year did that come out? Like, it was 79 or 80? Yeah, I mean, I must have been like maybe 6, maybe 7 when I saw it, and it was crazy. But it was a great movie, and it was dark. It had great music too.
79.
Yeah, John Barry's score is really, it's good.
Yeah, it's great.
That was Disney's obvious attempt to create their own Star Wars.
Not that I'm pushing Hollywood to do more redos at all, because obviously there's a deficit of creativity coming out of Hollywood, but that movie might have been a little before its time, because it was a great plot. It was interesting, and done right, and not make it into like an Event Horizon. It could be cool.
It was definitely more sci-fi than fantasy.
Oh yeah,
like
absolutely.
if they were trying to recapture Star Wars. But I don't want them to remake it. I want a sequel, like they did with Tron. I want a sequel to the Black Hole.
Yeah, it might be too far removed for people to care about it. They might not know. You might have to reboot the whole thing to make it happen. But it was a great movie, and the Black Hole is one of those kind of like sci-fi classics for me. That it's just a cool movie.
If anyone from Disney's watching, why is this not on Blu-ray?
Speaking of cool weapons, Matt, number 5 on your list. It's pretty cool.
Han Solo's famous blaster.
Even I get boarded sometimes. You think I had a choice? Over my dead body. Yes, I bet you have.
Poor Greedo.
Yeah, he had it coming, I think.
The Blastech DL-44.
It's such a throwback to the Westerns. It's slung low on his thigh there. Such a cool look, and he was so cool with that gun, and it was one of my favorites. And when I was a kid, yeah, it's funny when I'm listening to this, I wanted all these toys. I never had any of them, but I wanted the Han Solo blaster toy, and I never had it, but my neighbor had it, so I used to like steal it from my neighbor all the time.
So you'd always grab it from him. What was he left with?
He had, I don't know, he was playing with like a lightsaber or something. But I always wanted the blaster, and it was cool. It had the cool sound effects and stuff, and it was such a neat gun.
Yeah.
Yeah, his blaster was probably one of my favorites of all time.
Yeah, it's a great gun, based on a German Mauser.
That's right.
And they just added like a scope to it and a few other little greeblies, and you had a classic.
Man, it's awesome. All right, moving on here to Jared's number 4. Jared, what do we have?
Freedom.
Sons of Scotland, I am William Wallace.
William Wallace is 7 feet tall.
Yes, I've heard. Kills men by the hundred. And if he were here, he'd consume the English with fireballs from his eyes and bolts of lightning from his arse.
That's it. But he didn't use bolts of lightning from his arse. He used a giant sword.
Man, that was a big sword.
Yes. Giant claymore. When I saw that, Braveheart came out in 95.
Yep.
And it was like one of the first like big historical epics I think I'd ever watched. And it blew me away. The battle scenes in that, for the time, this was pre, Lord of the Rings and anything like that. And still, there was some CG in there, but mostly practical. He was dealing with like thousands of people on a battlefield. And
yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, and but that sword, I just thought it was really cool. Look, it was very simple, but it seemed like it was extremely powerful. And
could you imagine being hit by like a 5 foot long, probably like a 30-pound sword?
Yeah,
I don't know how they wielded it.
It would mess you up badly. And I actually, go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was gonna say I remember seeing that in the theater, and that was pre Saving Private Ryan. And that was like one of the first movies where you watch it and you're like, oh, yeah, being in a battle would suck.
Oh, man. They took all the romance out of that quick.
Yeah. And So, going back to my knife show days, I actually purchased a replica of that sword and still have it. Not knowing a full-size replica.
Do you have it? I don't think I've ever seen it.
Yeah, it's in my closet in here, and that's pretty much where it's been ever since I've owned it, because I don't know what to do with it. But, it was I got it for a steal. Go dig up a
sprinkler with it or something?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a steal, so I picked it up. Yeah, so that's my number 4.
That's a good one. Mike, number 4. Looks like we've already kind of talked about.
So I guess we'll be moving right along to you, Matt.
That was RoboCop's gun. Mike's number 4.
Okay, my number 4 from a classic movie from 1987.
They single-handedly destroyed the rainforest.
It's nothing. That scene is such. If you didn't know, that's from Predator, and that was the minigun being fired right after Jesse Ventura had his chest exploded out.
Yes, the minigun was called Old Painless. That was what Jesse called it.
Is that what he called it? I don't remember.
Old Painless.
Yeah, Painless. And what's funny, they said that gun, if a man was to actually carry that gun, the amount of ammo he could carry would last about 4 seconds.
Yeah, I can imagine. It was such an absurdity.
Yeah,
but that's such a. But for that one scene in the movie where they're mowing the entire jungle over, that became one of my favorites. Trees exploding from it. I mean, it's so awesome.
It was.
The handheld minigun from Predator.
That definitely belongs on the list for sure.
Jared, moving on. Number 3.
This is, let me see if I can get this.
Mimi.
Yeah, it's Thor's hammer.
That's probably a better way of saying it.
Yes. Yeah. Thor's hammer. I think it's a cool weapon. I like kind of the story behind it. I'm glad it made a little comeback in the last Avengers movie. And seeing Captain America wield it was pretty awesome as well.
Well, Captain America
scenes in the entire series.
Wielding it ruined my childhood.
Oh,
what? No, that's a reference to somebody on That's like an in joke.
Oh, okay.
That was one of the cooler moments, definitely in the entire series, was when Captain America, of course, wielded Thor's hammer.
I will say when I saw it on opening night, that was a real crowd cheering moment. So
yeah, well, with good reason. It was really cool.
And it's another one of those, when it hits people, you feel it. That hard hit. Sorry, Matt.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. It does look like it hurts.
So my question then, spoiler alert. So Thor gets his hammer back, and in a different timeline, though, and then returns. So what happened to the hammer in the other timeline?
Well, Captain America brought it back to him. Remember, he has the hammer there at the end of the movie. When he goes back, when he's going back to put all the stones back, he has the hammer with him. So he leaves it. He probably leaves it on Asgard.
There you go.
Leaves it next to it.
So he got it back.
Next to a column. Okay.
Well, on that note, then, how do you return a soul stone?
You just walk up to Red Skull and say, "Hey, you want this back?
I think you dropped this.
Here you go, pal."
Do you get a refund?
Yeah. Not to go down a rabbit hole, but that's a scene I would have liked to have seen. Was
there's the returning of the weapon.
There's a really funny meme about that. Have you seen that where it's Red Skull? And he says like something like, "Oh, at least Captain America's dead," and he goes, "I don't want to go. I'll ruin it." But there's a real funny meme with that. Go ahead, moving on. Moving on.
Okay, I'll search that one out.
We'll post it on our Facebook page.
All right, Mike. Moving on.
Here's another one from it's carried over through 4 films, hopefully into 5. Is Rambo's Bow. Another one where you can feel it. And these people are like flipping over backwards when they get hit. This is my favorite, the one at the end. He gets hit, falls on an explosive, and then you hear his body parts fall.
Nice.
Was that from part 4?
Yes.
Okay, that's
of
what
course.
But of course,
that was so over the top. That movie.
It has a magic quiver that he never runs out of arrows.
I remember in Rambo the screw-on explosive heads. It made every kid want to get a compound bow and be Rambo in his backyard.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like, Mike, judging from the trailer, the bow will be in part 5.
It's such a great weapon. It's such an over-the-top character, too. So I'm glad to see it. He's still around. All right, my number 3 from 1983, the movie Krull.
Beyond our time, beyond our universe, there is a planet besieged by alien invaders, where a young king must rescue his love from the clutches of the beast, or risk the death of his world. A world called Krull.
The glaive, to me, was one of the most amazing weapons that ever was created by the time I was 8 years old. The glaive is like a spinning boomerang with knives on it. And Ken Marshall in the movie, swashbuckling Ken Marshall in this role, retrieved the glaive, this mystical weapon, out of a lava flow. Miraculously got there right in time as it's going by, and pulled it out with his bare hand somehow. And this amazing, shiny, cool, jeweled weapon emerged. And you could throw it, and he controlled it with his mind, and it was awesome. But he lost it at the end of the movie. But yeah, the glaive, to me, was one of those super cool, super neat, original weapons that always kind of stuck in the back of my head there.
Well, I think it's fair to say that was the main draw for people to go see that. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, I thought the glaive was called Krull. I thought that's.
Oh, you thought? Well, I mean, it was so featured right there.
Yeah, no. So
when poster,
when you see the movie, and you're like, oh, the planet is called Krull.
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly one of the more. I mean, if just purely weapons invented for movies, it's one of the first ones that springs to my mind. And I think the movie's pretty forgettable. But
yeah, the movie, when I finally saw it, I think what was funny about it is whenever they would do something, it was almost like they were making it up. Like, okay, now you have to go to the mountains of despair and see Zebedee-Doo. He'll tell you what to do next.
Yes.
Okay, let's go. Like they were they were just making it up as they went along.
It really had it was like the poor man's Lord of the Rings is what it was.
Very poor.
Yeah, you had the group that was on their quest to do ridiculous things and find ridiculous people and just accomplish things. But the glaive tied it all together and made it memorable for me, because you're right. If it didn't have something cool, a cool hook like the glaive in it, the movie would never. It'd be something like Looper or Looker. I'm sorry, Looker.
Yeah.
It make the Looker level for me.
If it didn't have the glaive, we wouldn't be talking about it right now.
Absolutely.
No, we wouldn't. There'd be nothing to talk about if it didn't have the glaive.
Okay.
We might talk about James Horner ripping himself off again for scoring it.
True.
But that's another day.
All right. So,
Jared, moving on.
My number 2 has already been discussed, and that's the Star Trek phaser. Yeah. So we've talked about the phaser enough, I think.
Okay. So my number 2 is actually from Wolverine, but not what you would think it would be. I actually picked his fists.
You have one word left. Really? Shingen!
Every time I watch that movie, in that scene, I feel those hits. I mean, I think in movie history, those are the hardest punches I've ever seen in a movie.
From are you talking about from the Wolverine?
From the Wolverine.
Where he goes to Japan.
Yeah, where he beats up on the girl's fiance. And he's just punching the guy in the face. Oh. And it, like, every time I watch that movie, it hurts. It hurts me when he does that.
Okay.
And
well, those hands, I wouldn't want to be hit by those hands.
No.
So, wow, that's interesting. I thought you were referring to his adamantium claws.
No, I mean, they're cool and all, but man, I swear, every time I watch that movie, that scene, I flinch every time. Every time.
All right.
Fair enough. Listen. That was very strange. You and Hugh Jackman can go watch Looker together and not talk about his adamantium claws. So, number 2 for Matt. What do you got for us?
My number 2, well, just take a listen. You'll know what it is.
Oh, yeah.
One of the most classic movie weapons of all time, Indiana Jones's whip. I had to have a whip every time I went out and played in the woods. I would rip vines down, wrap them up on my hip, and walk around, and I was Indiana Jones.
Yeah, I mean, I got a whip from a gift shop.
What kind of gift shop?
I was up in Pigeon Forge, where the hillbilly outpost or whatever. And,
you need a 6-pack of Coke and a whip?
Yeah. And listen, it is not as easy as just watching Indiana Jones doing it, trying to do that yourself.
Oh, it's so true.
There's a lot of
it's hard to get a whip to crack right.
Oh, yeah. Excellent choice. And so watching Harrison Ford knows how to use that thing.
Yeah. Well, Raiders of the Lost Ark is my favorite movie of all time. And it was such an interesting, different kind of tool to see in the movies. It just wasn't used before Indiana Jones.
Absolutely.
And he was such a MacGyver problem solver, that whip. I mean, it really could do everything. Anything he needed it to do, he could do with it.
Yeah, exactly. Great
but the
choice.
whip, definitely one of my favorites of all time.
All right. I think we're...
we've almost reached the summit.
The grand finale? I think it's going to be a...
What could it be? I have no idea.
Well,
can anybody guess?
Thundar's Sun Sword. Yes.
Ukla is still running around.
Yes, of course. It's the lightsaber.
I think it's fair that everybody picked number 1 lightsaber on that one.
Yeah, I mean...
How could it not be? It's one of the coolest things ever created.
What a great weapon. I mean, it hangs at your side.
Yeah.
And then with a flick of a switch, it has a deadly blade.
It requires almost no training.
Apparently.
To use.
Yeah.
The lightsaber. I think when I was a kid... when Jedi came out and he had that green bladed saber, I think that one became my favorite as a kid.
Was that your favorite?
Yeah, that one was my favorite one.
The Jedi
I think
saber.
As I've gotten older, I've gone back to the blue one. But as a kid, the green was magic. That was the coolest lightsaber that ever existed when he had that green blade.
Yeah, it was cool. But in a lot of early trailers for Jedi, it was blue. They animated it blue. You know why it was made green?
No, why?
Because they shot so many scenes out in the desert against the blue sky, they thought the green saber would show up better. And
well, it makes sense.
Yeah, wow, that's a good point.
So, Mike, what is your favorite saber from the saga?
Oh, yeah, you kind of caught me off guard with that. I think it's going to have to be Darth Maul. I mean, the double-bladed lightsaber. I mean, it's kind of like you could use it as a single blade or you could use it as a double blade. I mean, that was a pretty awesome...
I have to say, that's a moment, Darth Maul's blade, that was a true trailer spoiler that ruined a big part of that movie. If they had held back from seeing that double blade... Now, don't get me wrong. The trailer was amazing, and you had to go see the movie. You would see it anyway. But what a surprise that would have been if we hadn't seen it in the trailer.
Yeah, just
that double blade.
Having the double blades pop out there.
Yep.
Oh,
exactly.
yeah, but
what a moment for the crowd that everybody already knew was coming.
But by that time, weren't the toys out too?
Yeah, pretty much. There was all kinds of things spoiling that. But
that was a great lightsaber.
I think my favorite is the classic Anakin, Luke, and now Rey saber.
That's where I've come back to.
Yeah.
And thank God they brought it back.
Yeah. I'm glad it has survived. So, I just like the design of the handle, and the blue color's cool. So,
but when you notice the difference between the original trilogy, well, I guess more like the first film, and maybe carries over in a second, is originally the lightsabers are supposed to be like these really heavy. They're supposed to be like really heavy, and you can tell by the way,
like have a broadsword you're carrying.
Yeah, like a lot of weight to them. And of course, by the time you got to the prequels, that like went away.
Yeah, but
I
mean, how
spinning
heavy
them
would
on
they
one of their
be?
fingers.
They're light. I mean,
I don't know.
they're made of
Lucas
light.
talks about it on one of their one of the commentaries. He talks about it.
But
yeah, maybe if you have more midi-chlorians, you can wield it faster.
Okay, that's enough of that.
No, but the lightsaber definitely deserves its spot of honor as number one in our list.
Absolutely,
it's such an amazing movie.
Look, sound, everything, amazing.
Yeah, it knocked it out of the park. But that's our top 10 lists for all three of us. We hope you enjoyed our list. We'd love to see your lists. Post comments. Post your top 10. We'll love to read them and comment back. I'm sure you guys have some great lists yourself.
Absolutely.
But that's our top 10 list, guys.
Yeah. Tell us what we left out.
And comment on ours. Do you like any of ours? Do you hate them? Do you hate?
I predict
do you hate us?
People are gonna like the Looker gun.
You never know. Looker might be the closet top number one, top 5.
I have a feeling I've started a whole new life for that movie.
You could have. I'm curious myself.
Well, it's a few years away still from being a cult classic, but maybe you helped bump it up. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll get you next time. And that concludes episode 3. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Guys, I feel really good about tonight's conversation. I think that, that we've done like a lot of good for this new era that we have become citizens of, the knowledge that we've spread out to them, and they can take these little pod beans and just grow and let them sprout. And maybe they too can make their own weapons. And then maybe one day in the far future, someone will do a podcast about their weapons from this time, and it all stemmed from us. And I think we can really feel like a real sense of accomplishment and the word and pride in that. I don't know, maybe I'm thinking too big.
I feel inspired. And I tell you what, I need to clean up all these spent shell casings around here, but we want everybody to come back next week. We will continue this adventure into the 25th century.
You know you can't live without this content, so subscribe to the Hyperspace, podcasting in the 25th century. Follow us on social media, leave us a review, and join us next time as we take you into the 25th century.